welcome to the show, Lorena Creole.
Hi, Chrissy. Thanks so
Hi.
much for having me on. I'm so excited.
Me too. And look, happy Black History Month. Look, we're doing
Woo!
it.
Yes, we are.
Does
Yes,
that
we
like mean
are.
anything to you? Does it sound like almost patronizing? I don't know.
Um, it's kind of interesting because with Black History Month, and this is something that I kind of have to explain to people, when Black History Month was first instituted, Black achievements weren't really taught in schools. And I want to say this is maybe, I think, like 1920s or something like that. So they created that particular holiday to give awareness. And as the years and the decades and the centuries have come on, more Black achievement has been integrated into regular American history, which is true, which is what it should be. So I'm really not offended when people, talk about Black History Month, because for some people that's the only time
I think
that
that.
it gets into consciousness, because I'm just like, I don't, no disrespect, but I don't really pay attention to Asian history, all the way through, all of the year, or
No.
other ones. I mean, I pay attention to, Hispanic History Month, because I actually have a Latino ancestry as well. But the other groups, I just don't. And if there wasn't like a designated month, it's like I wouldn't hone in on that. So I tell people, don't, I wish the schools would teach better, but if that's the one thing that triggers you into saying, oh, I want to, learn more about, Black achievement in this country, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Do you what do you feel like is a big glaring something that the schools are not teaching that they should? Like what do you think is the most obvious change they could make?
To get away from this notion that all Black people were brought to this country as slaves. Now, I will say, before I started researching my family, I thought that that was true. My family thought that that was true, and that was the oral history that was passed down. But the more research I did on my own, I started finding out about free Africans who came to this country. They were free. Some, came through like the Spanish Empire, which is part of my family, through, Spanish Florida came that way. Spanish and French Louisiana came that way into the
Ooh.
islands. Some of them were enslaved, some of them were not. The Jean de Colère in French Louisiana, very powerful class of free Black and mulatto people. Some who, unfortunately, and I'm related to some of them, actually owned slaves. They did. Spanish Florida, same thing. There was a certain, I guess, a certain mechanism called cortación, which was codified in Spanish law, which said that if a slave paid that price, that cortación price, you had to free them.
Wow, that's
So that,
interesting.
yes, so there was a mechanism to do that. So that's kind of like how my family lived, from like Florida to Louisiana, from like, I want to say, from 1565 up
Wow.
until the Americans started to take over, most notably in Florida. When the Americans took over in 1821 from Spain, you had the institution of the Black Code. So if you were free, you either had to pay a tax, have a white sponsor, or if not, put yourself back into slavery.
Ugh.
So they really don't discuss that whole class. And it's very interesting history. They don't
Why
discuss that.
wouldn't they? That seems I feel like wouldn't it be to everyone's benefit to like because I feel like you're bringing this up like like it sounds like you wish this was taught more in schools because maybe it wouldn't give as many people this feeling of like I don't know. Do you think it makes people feel worse about themselves thinking that they all just came from slaves? That it's a little bit more like implants you with like a victim mentality or
I think it is a victim mentality, and it's different from, like, say, the 60s, 70s, 80s. People just wanted to know their history, especially with the TV show Roots. That really exploded things, where people just wanted to know their history. And I don't think that the embarrassment comes from slavery. I think the embarrassment comes from not knowing
Mm.
what your roots are. And not only that, but there are stories of people who were not victims, who pursued cases in court. Those people who protected, their families. There are so many stories out there of people who were not victims. They don't talk about, the slave revolts that were rampant in the United States. They kind of painted it as that slaves were all happy with, with what they were doing, and there was no revolt. There were plenty. There were
How
plenty
could there
of
not
them.
be? Yeah.
There were plenty of them, but I think that there's this idea that they want to teach this victim mentality before it was like, okay, this was the past. You pull yourself up and you do better with each and every generation. I've seen, like, on paper, some of my ancestors who were slaves freed in like 1865 couldn't read, couldn't write 1870. By 1880, not only could they read and write, but they owned their own property.
Wow. That's what we call a glow up.
Yep, exactly.
So how that's incredible. Like how were and you figured this all out because to do like you did like a 23andMe type test, or did it go like deeper than that?
A little bit deeper than that. My grandfather, who served in World War II, one of the things that he wanted the family history written down. No one had done that. Ours was like an oral tradition. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll get
Someone's
to
gonna
it one
forget.
day.
Like
Yeah,
someone's gonna yeah.
someone's going to forget, and that's the problem with, with oral tradition. Stories get passed around that may not exactly be accurate, and and all of that. And then probably about 5 years ago, I said, okay, the price of genetic testing has dropped, for DNA testing, because for some of us, especially if your background, you have a lot of enslaved people in your background, once you get to, I think, like 1870, there's that wall. You can't get past that.
Huh.
There's no information, because either whether you're a slave or free, it's the thing of just getting records. And that can be very, very challenging. There's a way to get them, but it's not, through the normal means. So I took an ancestry DNA test. I took that, got that back.
Is that pee? What do? You put it in your mouth? What do you give them? What
No,
do you have to
no, you
swallow?
don't think. You actually spit, honestly.
Okay.
Uh, you just like spit in a
Give them
tube.
just a sample of all your fluids. Be like, figure
Yeah,
it out. Learn what
just
you
put it
must.
out and they'll just spit it in there, but you just spit in a tube, and you send it. So I get it back. Yeah, African countries. Yeah, yeah, no problem. Okay. England. Yeah, I kind of figured that. Then I saw France. Then I saw Spain. Then I saw Germany. I'm like, okay, I've no idea what's going on with this, because my great grandmother, they always said, well, her father was Seminole Indian. I'm like, okay, so let's figure out if this is true. And no Native American matches. The only Native American that we had, believe it or not, was from Central America. So we're talking like Mexico,
Oh,
Yucatan. We're like,
cool.
okay, we don't know how that adds up. And then we had all of these matches who were from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. We'd never been there. And I'm just like, are you something's going on. I test my aunt, same test, boom, comes
Aw.
back, more Native Americans still from Central America, and yet more people in Cape Cod, and all these people from like the Dominican Republic, Colombia, places like that. I said, well, what's up with great grandma's father? Was he really Seminole? And she said, well, there was this rumor that her father was white, but it was not culturally acceptable. And this is a Jim Crow South, to actually say that. It was much more acceptable socially for her to say that her father, was a Seminole Indian. Not only
Oh,
was he a
okay.
white man, but he was a white man from Massachusetts.
Hence the Cape Cod.
Yep.
That's so interesting. This whole time I've been scared to spit in a tube and send it somewhere because I'm like, what are they gonna do with my information? They're gonna like, I don't know. I think I listened to too many conspiracy theories, but I'm just like, oh, what are they gonna do with it? They're gonna make clones somewhere. They're gonna. But I am getting curious. Like, who knows? Yeah, like people could make stuff up. People could, I don't know, lie. But that's
Mhm.
so interesting that they'd rather say Indian than white.
Yeah, I didn't understand it either. And then the more that I researched more like socially what was going on at the time. My great grandmother, and I call her like OG, Lorena Creole. So she was Afro Latina. She was very, very fair. People thought that she was white, but in the South, there was like that one drop rule. If it even looks like you may be black, guess what? Then, then you're black. So it was much easier for her to move in social circles to basically say, my father's Seminole Indian. Oh, okay. As opposed to say, my father is actually a white man from Massachusetts. Them and all their money came down after the Civil War. They basically bought up the whole freaking town because the South was destitute. At the end of the
Wow.
Civil War, Confederate money was worthless. So my third great grandparents, they packed up everybody from Orleans, Massachusetts, came to Alachua County, Florida, bought all their money. We're talking Kennedy money, and bought the
Wow.
whole town, bought people's farms, mortgages, all of that. So it wasn't, the classes did not mix at all. So it's much easier for her to do that. And somebody said Mayflower. Yes. Actually,
Yeah?
yes. I'm related to 10 Mayflower passengers.
What? That is so